Every new mum knows how tough it can be to look after a young baby, and there are sleepless nights, of course, feeding every couple of hours. But there's a maternity expert who says that modern mothers are pandering too much to their babies, and she says they mustn't grow up thinking the world revolves around them. She's suggested babies should be taught to wait when they cry, and they shouldn't sleep in the same room or bed as their mother any longer than 2 to 3 weeks. And this is a woman who's written books about child rearing, and she's now kind of revising her book and saying, you know, modern mothers have a different way. Do you think she's right in some of the things she said?
Well, first of all, I mean, she's in her 60s and she's got 6 grandchildren herself, so she's also got lots of personal experience, because sometimes you get experts telling you and you think, well, you haven't got kids. Yeah. But I think when I think the sentiment of what she says is quite good, which is, you know, a baby should not rule the roost. A baby should fit in with everybody else and not the other way around. But it's like anything in life, isn't it? Rules don't apply. So one set of rules can't apply to every single household. So it depends. If you've got to go out to work, you need a baby that probably sleeps at the right times. If you don't, then... And you just do what sort of works for you and what works for your family. So I think a lot of her advice is pretty good. But the whole controlled crying thing, I have an issue with if it goes on for too long, because my daughter didn't sleep for the first 2 years. She woke up 8 times a night. I was at my wit's end. I consulted somebody eventually. Turned out she had really bad sleep apnea. And
so I didn't even know babies.
No, as a doctor, we went to an ENT guy, and he monitored her sleeping pattern, and he just said, I normally say, wait and see. He said, I need her in tomorrow. It's putting a terrible strain on her heart because she can't breathe.
Wow. And what do they do then? What do they do about that?
They took her tonsils and adenoids out, and from the very next night, she slept through the night.
Although she does say, I mean, I have to kind of defend the controlled crying thing a little bit, because I did the Gina Ford Contented Little Baby
that was
book.
unusual. Yeah. I'm just saying.
And there's a lot of, you know, there was always a lot of controversy with that book, because people say, oh, you know, she says leave the baby to cry. And this, Rachel Wadilove says here, we're talking about a baby with a full stomach, a dry nappy,
within reason,
within reason. Yeah. Because the controlled crying thing, I think often people have to resort to that when they're at their wit's end at 6 months a year when their baby's not sleeping. But I didn't do... Jack was never in our room. He had his room right next to us. I had the baby monitor, and because I followed this routine, I used to get up before he even woke to go, right, it's feed time, and kind of wake him up to feed him. So I never had to go through that. However, as much as I had to always defend that, and I did a lot of interviews, I did used to say to people, hang on, if you want to carry your baby around in a sling all day and let it sleep in your bed and feed it whenever it murmurs, that's absolutely your prerogative, and I would not criticise you. No. But the minute somebody says, you know, oh, you should have a routine, or I do this, or I wake my baby, everyone's like, oh, bad mother. And I just think, like you, I think it's really hard for women, because why should anybody be telling us how to bring up our children?
Well, that's the words you just said, should have. Should have is kind of like, if you don't, you're made to sort of feel as though you're not conforming to the rules.
Yeah. If you've got a group of friends and there's a couple of women that have had babies, then they will tend to come to you and say, you know, please can you give me some advice? I don't know what to expect. So in that sense, it's nice to be able to give advice. So this is what worked for me, and I had to get my baby onto a routine, so this is what ABC. But of course, it might not necessarily work for you. You might be a single mum, or you might not be working, so it's sort of easier for you to sort of lay in bed with the baby in the morning, but it's different advice.
Did you have the boys in bed with you?
I didn't. Before we had our child, Rod said, look, I've been through this a few times before, and if it's just one thing I'm asking for is, I understand you're going to be breastfeeding and the baby's needs are important, but can we have our bed to ourselves? So absolutely, I was like, okay, well, you know, it's not just me and the baby, it's the whole family. And a husband is very key, of course, to making that baby. So I wanted to please him. So I had the baby right by my bed, but in his own cot. So, you know, every 2 or 3 hours, brought him over, breastfed him, and put him back in his cot. And so that was absolutely happy as pie. And then, you know, when we went on tour, that was a whole different matter, because you got the time changes with the different countries we're going to, Alistair's naps and things. So Rod was ending up calling it the Alistair Wallace Stewart tour, not the Rod Stewart tour anymore, because it was like, no, we can't take off at that time. Alistair's sleeping. So he did have to bend with some of the rules, but I kept him out of bed.
Linda.
Yes,
no
I am
babies
very
in the bed.
quiet. I'm not listening to any of this. In my house, our kids were in the bed with us. We absolutely loved them being in there. And when Lila stays now, Mark sleeps on a mattress at the side of the bed, and Lila's in the bed with me. And my kids were in the bed with me until they were probably about 6 or 7.
Really?
I don't know if
honestly.
say 16 or 17.
6 or 7, maybe a little bit later.
was
I'm not
that
owning up
because-
to any later than that. But
But was that because they would calm in the middle of the night and you say, oh, fine, get in? Or did you like them in there? Did
I
Mark
like
ever
them
say...
in there.
Can't
I
we
like
get
them in there. Well, he'd just go on the mattress if they were driving him mad. So we've got a mattress under our bed that lives there all the time. When Lila stays, the mattress comes out. And when the kids were growing up, I love them being in the bed with me. I love waking up in the morning, they're next to you.
I do. And I think there's a
Absolutely
time in their
lovely.
lives when they don't want to have anything to do with you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's quite nice when they're... I think, you know, when they sneak in at 4 in the morning for a little... I think it's lovely.
And I never left them when they were crying either. I couldn't leave a baby crying. I'd go in and... Because they're crying for a reason. They're hungry, they've wet their nappy, or they want to cuddle. Whatever they want,
If
I'd
the
go...
child's sick, obviously
Yeah.
that's an exception. Or maybe at the weekends it's fun to all kind of get into bed. But I think it's still important to have the marital bed, but husband and wife
We've got
to have
that
their
now.
Well, look at if all the different views, I go each to their own.
Yeah,
Your
exactly.
children, you bring them up how you like.
Wait until you watch these and click here to subscribe. You may as well. It's totally free.
Every parent thinks that their child is amazing.
No,
like,
I don't.
you know.
I don't. Sorry. Let me explain. No, I think my child is wonderful. I love and
Yeah.
adore him. He's the best
Yeah.
thing since sliced bread in my eyes. I
Yes.
don't think he's amazing. You know,